Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm Shana James. I am happy to be here today with Sherry James. Sherry, welcome.
Hi, I love that we have the same last name.
I love it too. I love it. So we're going to be talking about a vulnerable and edgy topic today. We're going to talk about erectile dysfunction and specifically why men in positions of power are more prone to erectile dysfunction. And I just want to start by saying that we are two women who are allies for men and, really supportive of men's journey in this arena, whether it's love, sex, relationship, leadership, all of it. We're really here to support you. And so I feel really honored that we get to be here. And Sherry has spent years in the field as both a nurse and a coach, and you have a lot of experience working with men in these realms. So thank you for all the work you do.
Thanks.
Yeah. So why don't we start out with a little bit about your story. Like, how did you start working with men in this realm of erectile dysfunction?
That kind of takes place in the kind of middle part of my life, maybe in the 30s. So there was some things that led up to that. But it really comes from a place of sexual healing and tantra. Uh-huh. And at the time, I wasn't doing anything like this. I was doing sexual healing, a little bit of tantric breath work, and men, women, and couples were coming in to see me. And men had more problems, I guess you could say. And I was noticing that when people were walking in, whether it be male or female, they were very out of their bodies, very stressed out and in their heads.
Yeah.
And so I made up a meditation that I would begin each session with. And it only took about 12 minutes. Uh-huh. And I was noticing that, guys were kind of like ruffling their pants around down there just from this meditation that wasn't sexy at all. It wasn't meant to be sexy. It was just meant to really help them relax and get into their bodies very quickly so we could really start the work. And afterwards, I'd kind of say, oh, hey, I noticed this was going on during the meditation. They're like, yeah, I'm really shocked because I've been having ED. Uh-huh. And that's actually one of the things I was hoping you could help me with. And at the time, I didn't have any idea I would be doing this. I mean, this is a really specific thing to deal with.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I just wanted to help because I started listening to their stories and how it was impacting their relationships.
Yeah.
How in some cases they were actually losing relationships or getting divorced or getting cheated on. And I could see how much pain that was causing them.
Yes.
So I thought, all right, Tantra is not going to be enough for this. Uh-huh. And a lot of guys just don't want to take pills.
Yeah.
Or they've had side effects and they don't want to do it. And plus it gives it a different quality. They might not like that quality.
Yeah.
So I just kind of put my thinking cap on and I knew that relaxing them had something to do with fixing them.
Right. Clearly in that meditation, just the relaxation helps them actually feel more in their body and have more, awakeness in their body and aliveness.
Yeah. And I thought, okay, I'll start there. Also, I have a background as a registered nurse. I mean, I'm still a registered nurse. And when I was doing that work, I was in diabetes and post-open heart. So I do have a strong sense of working with the circulatory system.
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
Good.
And
Good. Well, I mean, it's amazing, right? So this wasn't even necessarily where you started out, but men started coming to you. And as you were realizing, one of the specific things men struggle with is ED in relationships. And right, it can be such a painful experience. And, men have come into my coaching practice. And as I work a lot with men who are dating after divorce or dating later in life, and their bodies don't work the same way, and they're not having erections in the same way. And, a lot of times when they first meet a woman, it's harder to have an erection, or a lot of men are realizing, one man was telling me he thought there was something wrong with him. And what we ended up really figuring out was that he needed more of an emotional connection. So I'm just loving the holistic aspect of this conversation, right? That the culture out there, the medical community has their specific take on erectile dysfunction, but I know you have some different philosophies. So yeah, will you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, well, I right off the bat, though, I want to speak to something that you just said, is you said an emotional connection.
Yes.
A lot of the guys that come to me initially, they tend to self-diagnose, and the first thing they say is, oh, it's mental, right? It's got to be, I'm sure it's mental.
Uh-huh.
So far, that's been a 0. So
interesting. So far, that's not been the case with any of them.
No. So I've been doing this for 10 years. So that's enough to have an opinion about this. It's pretty valid. Yeah. So far, it hasn't been mental.
Great. I mean, it makes so much sense to me that men's first take on it would be, this is a mental thing. Mm-hmm. And then what are you actually finding? Is it more emotional?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. It is more underneath that is emotional. I feel like guys experience emotions as mental thoughts.
Yes.
So if, oh, it's mental, it's like, let's go deeper than that.
Yeah.
Because there's more, like, you're not having a neutral thought, right? There's emotional energy under that thought. Even if it's a fearful thought. Yeah. There's fear underneath that thought.
Right. Right. So, and men come into my office too. And it's often like when I say, well, what are you feeling? There's I think something, or I think I'm feeling, and I'm like, okay, this is a great start. And we're going to keep going, like, what are the actual sensations in your body, right? What are the emotions you're aware of? And so it is, men are really often conditioned out of feeling, and that it's safe to feel, or that it's manly to feel. There's a lot of like, suck it up and don't cry and don't be a wimp or a pussy or any of those things that men get as they're growing up as boys. And that's really painful.
Yeah. I do the same thing as you with where is that sensation in the body, because it does live somewhere and it might take several minutes to access that. And that's okay. So it's also about, as you know, working with men, providing them with a space to just be and unwind so that they can get in touch with those sensations.
Yeah. Right. Making it safe. And I imagine with couples, you help the other partner, whether it's a man or a woman, make it safe for the person who's struggling or having erectile dysfunction to slow things down and actually not to feel as much pressure.
Well, initially when they're working with me, there can't be any pressure. Yeah. So sometimes there has to be a period of, celibacy on purpose, just so we can get him like strong. Yep. And I don't work with women. I usually can refer the female partner to someone else because I don't know about you, but I have found that when the man is doing healing work, things will naturally come up for the woman. Yes. And so because I don't do that work, then she is referred to someone who does.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. I've worked a lot with women in my life, and it is powerful when one partner starts to do healing. of course, things come up for the other. So, well,
Yeah.
okay, before we go into your philosophies, or as we're going into your philosophies, let's do a little bit on why men in positions of power are prone to erectile dysfunction, because, you know, I imagine this can happen for many different reasons, but there's something specific about power and responsibility that can create this experience. So what have you seen around that?
Well, in my opinion, stress is the number one cause of erectile dysfunction. So there's many causes. It's never just one thing. I just want to, it's never just one thing.
Never black or white. Yeah.
And so for me, it's like stress is the man behind the curtain. Like pulling, you know, not pulling the strings or not getting things up.
Right.
And so, you know, I've observed that guys that are in positions of power have a lot more responsibility. They're typically traveling more, you know. So when someone says to me, a lot of them have two phones as well. Like if you have two phones, you might be on the pathway to having ED. Like, you know, that might be a kind of a bizarre sign. Yeah. When someone says to me, there's only 25 minutes of my life, so where I'm flying, let's say to China, and someone can't get a hold of me, for that 25 minutes, I can actually relax.
Whew. It's a lot of stress.
I'm like just thinking about it, I'm getting stressed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really comes down to the nervous system, because that level of stress is keeping them in a fight or flight mode.
Yes.
And the nervous system is what begins the whole heart-on cascade. All right. So when you've got the bad wiring coming in there, it's going to affect everything, including your endocrine system, your immune system.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes so much sense. And I can see stress from any area of life, right? Whether it's survival stress or money stress or responsibility stress and managing, you know, dozens or hundreds of thousands of people, all of those have their different stresses. So it sounds like what you're seeing is the kind of stress where you're on all the time and you need to be answering to people, whether it's colleagues or bosses or funders or whatever. And, you know, you're constantly going back and forth, you're traveling, you're looking at this phone and that phone, and everybody's just pulling at you.
Your relationship, kids, you know, thousands of employees.
Yes. Right. So many responsibilities. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what you do or how you work with men to, you know, ease the struggle. And I know you said you have a couple of philosophies that are different than the medical, you know, norm out there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, how I work with someone is first determining which primary category they're in. So the things that create an erection are nervous system, circulatory system, the emotional, mental body, and how they're managing their sexual energy. And then there's also like a sexual fitness piece too, like working on PC muscles, things like that.
Yeah.
So I just have to, you know, do the consult and figure out, okay, what's your primary category? And then that's the area that we target.
Yes.
Everyone has everything.
Yes.
Everyone falls into
not just one.
Yeah. And so it's never just one thing.
Yeah. But then you know where to start. You know what the main issue is.
Yeah, because it's customized.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, this is where we're going to, you know, this is our priority. And then we set that goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I was reading a little bit about what you wrote, right? That erectile dysfunction for you and your philosophy is an invitation to heal yourself from the inside out. And I often see that as well, right? When a client of mine goes through a breakup or is let go from a job or takes on a new role and is struggling to, you know, feel competent or whatever it may be, it feels like I always see it as an invitation to heal from the inside out, you know. Or one of my clients recently said, is this what a midlife crisis is? Am I in a midlife crisis? And I was like, well, I prefer to see it as a midlife realignment, right? Or an opportunity to actually go deeper and discover who you are. You can enter into the second half of your life or wherever this happens, and you can stay kind of sleepwalking through life, or you can actually wake up to the deeper parts of you that are more, you know, true to yourself versus living based on everyone else's expectations. So I feel grateful that for you, right, you're not looking at it as let's just pop a pill and fix this.
Mm-mm.
Like, let's actually go into the deeper places.
Well, yeah. And I feel like people have been brainwashed by the medical association,
Yeah.
and they're saying your penis is broken.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not touching anyone when I'm working with them, right? Like I'm not touching the penis. I'm not like we're working online or, possibly in person, but, our clothes are
There's
on.
no physical contact.
And I'm literally upgrading every system so that they can get hard. And more importantly for me is that they wake up hard.
Yeah.
Because once that's taken care of, that's 95% of the problem.
Huh. Interesting. When they wake up in the morning.
Yeah, with nice, like healthy wood.
Morning wood.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So that's the focus, is to build that back up.
Great. I mean, this is so, like, you're a godsend.
An erection goddess. Oh.
Yeah, but it's true. So, right. Okay. So you were talking about how the cure is to heal the root causes, not rely on pills and things like that. And I think that just must be so relieving for men to realize, that they don't have to. I mean, in some ways it's easier to pop a pill, but we all know, right? Then you're dependent on that for the rest of your life. And then you're not actually dealing with what's causing it. So I'm glad that you're doing.
Yeah. And like any kind of addiction, in a way, you're going to have to keep upping the dosages.
Right. And there are side effects.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a lot of them don't like the way it feels.
Huh.
Like in my mind, obviously I don't have a penis, but I feel like, like when you're having a campfire, like you're burning that natural wood.
Yeah.
It's very different than putting like a Duraflame in the fireplace. Like it's just, it has like a different quality to it. They're both fires.
Yeah.
But they're different.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And as we're talking about this, I'm just thinking about how much shame. I've been watching the adult cartoon Big Mouth. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's hilarious and painful. It's all about puberty and kids going through that phase of, and boys especially, where they start to have all that energy and start to masturbate and start to, stand up in class or not be able to stand up in class because they have an erection when they're, in their 12, 13, 14, whatever that is. So I've just been back into that painful part of, my own past and when we're all young, and that we all have that still inside of us. Right. And so I love that. I think there's this overlap between what you do and what I do. Like sometimes I have men share, well, what are your desires and what are your fantasies, and how do you be able to say them out loud and actually validate that you are good and that your desires are good. Right. And then I love that you're working with the circulatory system and the nervous system. So so let's talk a little bit about, how do you do that when a man comes in and is struggling with ED, and you said you choose, or you do the consultation of where you're going to start. Give us a sense of, okay, if it was the nervous system, how would you start?
Really making them become aware of how they're breathing on a moment-to-moment basis. Because what I'm finding is when I show guys how to meditate, or I get them meditating even just 10 minutes a day, they're like, oh, I'm done. And then they go about their life and they're not present, and they're not breathing deep and full through the nose.
Oh, I see. They're just done, like, oh, I got this handled.
Yeah, because naturally a man's brain puts things in compartments. Yeah. So it's like, well, no, that's just to kind of teach you how to do it and to like create a reset so you know what it feels like. Yeah. But really it's about that moment to moment awareness of how you're breathing, which should be deep and full through the nose.
Well, I would imagine, right, if they just get it, sure, that's one thing, but then where the rubber meets the road is in those moments where they're faced again with the fear or the shame, or, what's going to happen if they don't get an erection. And so then to be able to carry that into that moment takes a little bit more.
If you're present and breathing through your nose, you're not going to be thinking fearful thoughts. Mm-hmm. So it really does carry into everything. And as I like to say, the most powerful person is the most relaxed person in the room. So it does help with business and leadership and anything like that. Is relaxation is power.
That's so interesting hearing you say that, because I can see with some of my clients where um, dating is hard because they know that down the road, they've had erectile dysfunction, or sales is hard because they know down the road they haven't felt competent or powerful enough or whatever, right? And so it is interesting how it's sometimes when someone asks me, what is it about this immediate situation that's challenging, like dating? Why is dating hard? And then when we take a step back, we realize, right? Oh, it's because you felt this shame or you felt this fear that hasn't necessarily happened in that moment, but your body's kind of gearing up and recognizing that it will come,
Mm-hmm.
or not, right? That was a bad pun, right? That
Yeah.
this experience is going to happen and it's going to bring more shame and fear. So yeah, to continue training the nervous system feels, imperative, necessary.
We could even take that a step deeper, because
Yes, please.
I love going deep.
Good.
Is that you will be put in situations to recreate that fear and that shame until you heal it.
Yes.
And for me, that's the emotional, the kind of the electrical charge work in the body.
Uh-huh. Oh, good. Say more about that. So what's the electrical charge work? How do they do that?
These things have to be released from the body, the cellular memory, and the nervous system.
Yeah.
They will naturally release mentally once you go in and do that.
Once you go in and do what?
Release the charges. So I call them charges because I think of them as being electrical, because we are electrical beings, and I'm still Tantra based.
Yeah.
So I'm always thinking about electromagnetics and electricity.
Yes.
So I'm sure with the work you do, you're having them feel into the sensation in their body. So that's the emotion, right? The emotion for energy and motion.
Yeah.
If they're not in motion, then they're stuck. And that's where there's like a charge.
Yeah.
So from my perspective of doing this for a long time, something that created shame, let's say for a guy when he was 9 years old,
still lives in his body.
And life will keep bringing him into situations to activate that shame.
Yeah.
And I would even say that that's a big part of what addictions are.
I would agree. And that's, and it's a really empowering perspective too, because then instead of asking, God, why is this happening to me again? Or feeling like I'm being punished, if you start to look at it from that perspective, it's like, oh, okay, this is an invitation, or this is me being able to take that next step and ultimately be more powerful and freer and more alive, as I work through this.
Yeah, and one of the formulas I work with for men to get them in balance is open heart, strong spine, hard dick. Right? Like you want all three of those.
Yeah.
And so if you are a victim, or, if you might be open-hearted, but you can still be kind of playing the victim and not have much of a spine and getting walked all over. Yep. That's going to affect your ability to get hard.
Yes. Yeah. So interesting, because I have a similar, I talk about head, heart, and sex, or head, heart, and balls, right? Where it's like, and I would also add belly or hara these days, as like the spiritual center or that grounding. But right, I often talk about how if you're so much in your heart that you don't have access to like that intensity or that primal desire, right, then you're not going to stay hard, or there is a way that you kind of get soft in your interactions, even if it's not physical. And so,
and women need something to bump up against. So when I say strong spine, I'm saying self-respect, boundaries, and sense of self.
Yes. Beautiful. I love that.
Right? Because we'll push.
Yeah.
I'm aware of all this. And I even feel myself sometimes if I'm on a date or something, like there's a little bit of a pushing.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to fall in. Like I need tension, right? Like that polarity.
Right. You're pushing a little bit, right? To see, okay, what's going to happen? Am I going to be held?
How far can I go?
And in all of this, it's so interesting because one of the things that I'm thinking now as we're talking about this is part of what I want men to know is no matter what is happening in your body, right, you can have a really beautiful sexual experience. You don't have to be hard. to have a sexual experience that is hot and that is intimate and that is connected. And that can be a really powerful experience, is to recognize and take the shame out of that. And I know that most men, when they have erectile dysfunction or something like this, the first go-to is like, how do I get this fixed and how do I get this solved? So I want to honor both, that of course it's okay to solve this. And I also want to say for men who are struggling, that sex doesn't have to just look one way, and that there's so many different ways to be able to interact and have it be hot.
Absolutely. And I want to tie that back to something you said earlier, that you have a lot of clientele that's kind of in their midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So this has been so interesting. I'm sure you've been doing this forever and I've been doing this forever.
Yeah.
So how a guy gets turned on in his 20s is going to be very different than how he gets turned on in his 50s.
Yes.
Right? They're operating from a completely different chakras. Like as we age, as we evolve, that Kundalini energy moves up through the body.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden a guy's in his heart, which is a female chakra, is because that everything on the energetic level manifests on the physical level, all of a sudden his hormones are changing. He's getting less testosterone and he's like, I kind of need a connection now. So actually, and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah.
And then that's normal. And I'd like to speak to something else that's normal too, is having, as you get older, your testosterone naturally will decline.
Yep.
So on some level, your desire will also decline. For me personally, that doesn't play into getting hard. But a lot of this is natural.
Yeah.
Right? Like not necessarily getting hard. That doesn't have to be natural, because if you really take care of yourself and up all these systems, you can definitely be getting hard at any age.
Good. Great.
But yeah, so I'm sure you know what I mean, but it's just you're operating from a different system.
Yeah. Which again, I think is the opportunity to be more mature. I mean, I've heard some men who actually feel relieved. They're like, thank God I'm not being run by, my cock anymore, right? It's like, oh, I can actually think straight and I can be around people and I'm not just constantly thinking about sex. And for other men, it can be a really big disappointment and a sense of, that was my identity and that was who I knew myself to be. And who am I now? Which is often when men come in to see me like, oh my God, right? I don't even know. I don't either. I feel like I'm kind of dying inside, or something just isn't right, or all the same things that used to make me happy are no longer making me happy. So all of those are coming into play at this point, right? And I would say these days, probably starting in sometimes mid 30s, but generally like 40s, 50s, 60s, anywhere in there.
Yeah, I would say 38 and up.
I love it. Specific 38 and up.
Yeah, 38 to 42. There's some kind of change where they're like, something seems different, or things aren't quite working how they used to. And then it cascades from there.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we covered a little bit about the nervous system, the electrical system. What do you do as far as, I think the emotional system was another one that you do some work with?
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you and I, both do that. Yeah. And that's releasing the charges that are blocking you.
Right.
I personally love Tantra. I love working with sexual energy because it's a magnifier.
Yeah.
Everything's going to show up. Like as a guy approaches sexuality or he's having sex, well, for women as well. Yeah. It magnifies everything. It's like being an overnight sensation, and all of a sudden the cameras are on you, right? And so any emotional stuff that's going on as you approach sexuality, that's very telling.
Yes.
So I like to see bookmark that, like what's going on right here. And then once we unwind that, it clears up in all the other areas. It's kind of like healing the roots of the tree so the entire tree can flourish.
Yes. Yes. And I've seen that happen with men who I've worked with, where we go into something emotionally, we clear out, right? I have a little bit of a different lens where it's like, I think I do a relational work where we get to start to see what's keeping them from being really connected or intimate in the moment. Mm-hmm. And then these old emotional things come up, and then they go walk out into the world, and suddenly it's right, cameras on them. Like people are paying attention to them and people are stopping them in the streets. And yeah, it's really amazing to see what happens.
That's the good byproduct.
Yes.
Yeah. But first you have to shine a light on it to become aware of it, to shift it.
Right.
And then
you
feel the positive spotlight.
Yes. Yeah. Right. It's a courageous journey. It's kind of the hero's journey to be willing to actually shine the light on it instead of just hiding it.
That's what I say too. I can tell we've both been working with men for a long time. I feel like I'm Siri. Like this is their journey. We're going to go on this road trip.
Yeah.
I'm not really even in the passenger seat, right? Because this is your journey. You have to do the homework. You have to do these things. Like, yeah. I'm just your guidance system of like, you might not want to do that so much. You might not want to go in that direction.
Turn that way.
Back it up. And I think that can be challenging for the women that are in relationships with these men.
Yeah.
Because it is inner work.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not, you can't always help with everything. And I'm not even in the car. I'm just like Siri, this little voice.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I think I often say to men, someone asks me like, what advice do you give? I'm like, I don't give advice, right? Like I'm sitting there, being an ally on this journey and helping men come to their own truth and their own understanding. Right. Yeah. In that same way.
Yeah. Guidance.
Yeah. Good. All right. Any systems we missed? I think we talked about 3 or 4.
Circulatory.
Okay. What have you got for us on that?
You got to keep moving. you got to keep moving. You want to get to the point where you're exercising, where like you can feel tingling in your fingers. So doing cardio to that point. I also have an Chinese medicine background with the 5 elements of Chinese medicine that I brought into all this as well. So when your heart is open and like you're getting good cardiovascular, you'll be able to feel it in your hands, in your fingers. And that's when you're producing the nitric oxide that you need to also create that hard on.
Great.
So I just feel like guys aren't pushing themselves hard enough, or like, oh, well, I work out with a trainer twice a week. Well, there still needs to be more. Like even if it's 10 minutes a day,
like more consistency, more often.
It can be shorter periods. Of just being more effective about it. It doesn't have to be these killer workouts. It can be 10 minutes a day.
Great.
Just to get that blood flowing. Because why you can be doing all of this yourself. So why invest in pharmaceutical companies?
Yeah.
Right? If you can just do this yourself, it honestly doesn't take that much time. The homework that I give my clients is no more than 15 minutes a day.
Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome. Amazing. Good. Okay. Anything else we missed that you want men to know on this topic?
I mean, the management of sexual energy is pretty important too. And the reason I was so specific about the 38 to 42 is when we start seeing changes is because it's what I call it's like credit card debt.
Yeah.
Like they've been ejaculating so much. Like if they've got time and they can get it up, they're doing it. So you have to think of it as like, that's money. And all of a sudden you're 38 to 42, things aren't working. You're not waking up with morning wood. You're having difficulty. It's getting hard. And it's like waking up and going, oh my God, I'm $100,000 in debt. Like I had no idea. And that's how I think of it. And so we have to go in and rebuild all that sexual energy back up. So for me, my perspective is always to, like I said, getting morning wood is 95% of the problem. Once we build that back up.
Once you build back up the body and the sexual energy system, that will happen.
Circulate all of it. And once that's, I have 2 people right now, they're neck and neck, like they're the same, they started at the same time. And they're both what I call coming online, where I'm getting these text message like, I woke up with a 9 today. This hasn't happened in years. And
so great.
I kind of know at what stage, because we've been building it.
Yes.
So I kind of know. And so it's like, it's really fun for me to get these messages, and then they're like, okay, now what? Like, so
Good.
gives it aliveness. Yeah. You're getting money back. Like you're getting yourself out of debt.
I love it. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for talking about it, for making it safe to talk about, for making it safe, for men to actually start to trust and open their bodies and not have to put chemicals in their bodies to feel better. Like, fine if you want to, right? I'm not saying that's wrong for any of you listening, but that there is actually a more natural way that starts to open up these deeper pathways of having more sexual energy and more intimacy and more connection and more joy and all of that. So thank you for doing this work.
And thank you for working with men as well. There's not that many women working with men, so I was happy we could talk.
Yes, happy we could connect. Great. Any last words, last thoughts?
Oh my gosh. I feel like we covered so much.
Good.
So yeah.
Good. I think my only last thought that I'm having just, talking about this vulnerable topic is, I know that so many men have been, shamed and guilted into thinking that you have to do it alone. And, that it's unmanly to get help or ask for help. And so I think I just want to put out the loving reminder that getting help, whether it's with erectile dysfunction or more what I do with, dating and relationship and all of the issues in communication and, the struggles in that way, that you deserve to be helped, right? This isn't something we're meant to do on our own. We weren't set up from a young age in a way that we just learned this all and, got set on a path of ease. So yeah, I think I'm just a support for, if you need help, reach out to one of us. We're both safe and we care about you and we want you to have what you want. And yeah, you don't have to do it alone.
Yeah. Well, and do something for yourself.
Yeah.
So this would be something for yourself.
Yeah. Right. A lot of men get stuck in the role of provider and, parent and boss and all these things. And to do something for yourself and actually take care of yourself is really important.
Yeah. It's extremely important.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being here today.
All right. Thanks.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to ShaynaJamesCoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.